They say you can't choose your family. But my family chose to replace me with a forgery and steal the life I was born to live. I'm going to choose their ruin. The envelope from the genetics lab felt heavier than any contract I'd ever signed. My hands didn't shake as I slid the report out. I already knew. I'd known for months, in a place deeper than logic in my bones, in my blood, or what I thought was my blood. Probability of paternity, 0%. Probability of shared maternity, 0%. The words weren't shocking. They were just final. A death certificate for the person I used to be. For 30 years, I have been a ghost living in a stranger's life. It started with a joke. My 30th birthday. The grand dining room echoed with the sound of expensive people making expensive laughs. My father, Robert, clapped me on the shoulder. His grip was always a little too tight, like he was holding me in place. "Thank God you got your mother's brains, not mine," he boomed. Or, "This company would be doomed." The table erupted. I smiled the empty smile I'd perfected. And then I saw her. My mother, Eleanor. Her champagne flute froze midway to her lips. For a single, terrifying second, all the polished grace vanished from her face. Her eyes, usually so warm when they looked at me, snapped to my father. It was pure animal panic, a silent scream. Then it was gone, smoothed over so fast I almost doubted I'd seen it. Almost. That was the first crack. And once you see a crack, you can't stop yourself from pressing on it until the whole wall comes down. A month later, they set me down for what they called an inheritance preview. In the lawyer's office, surrounded by the smell of old paper and ambition, they laid out my golden future. A $250 million trust. Yachts, estates, a legacy. My birthright. The lawyer, Gerald, droned on about vesting schedules and irrevocable clauses. My eyes glazed over until a phrase leapt out at me. The party recognized under the 1994 finalized adoption decree. The heir left the room. Adoption decree. I'd never heard those words in my life. My story was a miracle birth, a happy ending after years of heartache. I was their blessing, not their acquisition. I confronted my father that night in his study. The room always smelled of him, cigar smoke, leather, power. The documents from Gerald. I said, trying to keep my voice steady, they mentioned an adoption from 1994. He didn't look up from his financial reports. His face went still like a mask. "A legal formality," he said, his voice a dismissive wave of his hand. "From when we fostered you briefly, as an infant. It smoothed the inheritance. Don't be dramatic." But when his eyes finally met mine, they weren't a father's eyes. They were the cold, flat gray of a locked safe. "Do not open this door." So I didn't knock. I broke it down. I hired a man named Voss, a ghost who lived in the spaces between records. I paid him from an account my father didn't know about, the first secret I'd ever kept from them. We met in a diner that smelled of old coffee and grease. He slid a plain manila folder across the table. "No adoption decree exists," he said, his voice low. "Anywhere." My heart didn't sink, it just went cold. But he continued, tapping the folder. "A private jet owned by a family subsidiary flew from Seoul, South Korea, to Los Angeles on June 17, 1994. Manifest lists one infant, male. Designation for family placement. My birthday is June 18th. They didn't adopt me. They imported me. I was a product sourced to fill a vacancy. I opened the folder. The facts were bullets, each one tearing through the portrait of my life. Eleanor suffered a stillbirth in May 1994. The child, a boy, was buried in the family plot. Robert's sister, my Aunt Clara, was working in Seoul for the family foundation. She gave birth to a healthy boy on June 1st, 1994. Father, unknown. The infant disappeared from hospital records after discharge. The jet landed in LA on June 17th. I read the lines again and again. The pieces didn't just fit together, they detonated. I wasn't a random orphan. I was my cousin. The woman I called Aunt Clara, the fragile, absent woman, always spoken of in hushed, pitying tones, was my mother. The parents who raised me had stolen me from their own sister to cover up their own tragedy. They buried a child and replaced him with a stolen one, letting me call them mother and father, while they exiled the woman whose body I'd come from. For 30 years, I was a living lie, propping up their perfect family portrait. The rage didn't come hot. It came as a deep, silent cold, spreading through my veins like ice. It was a clear, focused void. They didn't just lie to me. They built me. They shaped my thoughts, my ambitions, my very smile to serve their narrative. The $250 million wasn't an inheritance, it was a settlement. Hush money for a life sentence. And Clara, what did they do to her? Was her comfortable life abroad a quiet cell? A sedated existence? Was she even alive? I went to the estate for the last time. The genetics report was a burning brand in my jacket pocket. I found him in his study, of course, king of his castle. The Henderson merger papers are on your desk, he said, not looking up. I know what I am. My voice was calm. It surprised me. I know about the jet. I know about Clara's son. I know about the stillbirth. He set his pen down slowly, a precise, controlled movement. Where did you hear these lies? I slid the paternity report across the vast, polished desk. It whispered to a stop in front of him. He glanced down. No surprise. No horror. Just a slight tightening of his jaw, a recalculating look in his eyes. I was no longer his son. I was a problem to be managed. This changes nothing, he stated, his voice low and firm. You are one of us. You have been raised as one of us. The company is yours. The money is yours. The past is messy, best left undisturbed. The past is a crime, I said, each word a chip of ice falling between us. You stole a child. You destroyed your sister. You built my life on a grave. Where is Clara? He sighed, a flicker of profound irritation, as if I'd brought up a tedious administrative error. Unwell. She lives abroad, comfortably. We provide for her, generously. He leaned forward, steepling his fingers. Pursuing this helps no one. You'll embarrass the family. You'll destabilize the company. You'll ruin yourself. You'll be revealed as an imposter. The world will pity you. Or laugh. Take your inheritance. Be the man we made you. It's the only logical path. There it was, the final confession. No love, no regret. Just cost-benefit analysis. My humanity was a column on a spreadsheet, and it was trending downward. The man I'd called my father for 30 years looked at my shattered world and saw only a public relations liability. I didn't say another word. I turned and walked out. I didn't pack. What was there to take? The clothes they bought? The books they approved? I took my car keys and the truth. That was all I owned. Voss's last note had a final line, a last known address for Clara. Not in Paris or Geneva. In a small seaside town in Portugal called Vila do Conde. A place to be forgotten. In a motel room that smelled of bleach and loneliness, I booked a one-way ticket to Porto. The $250 million trust felt like a chain around my neck, every link forged with their lie. To be free, I had to understand what was stolen. Not just from me, but from her. My revenge wouldn't be a bomb. It would be a slow, careful unraveling. I would find my mother. I would look into the eyes of the woman they broke. I would learn every detail of their betrayal. And then, with the patience of a stone, I would use every resource, every connection, every single dollar of the fortune they gave their fake son to dismantle their perfect, rotten world. They bought a child to be their heir. They didn't realize they were creating an orphan, and an orphan with nothing left to lose has all the power in the world. My life is a fiction, but my vengeance will be a truth so loud it tears their gilded world apart. They bought a son to secure their legacy, but in their greed, they crafted the perfect instrument of their own destruction, and I am already turning the key. The plane touched down in Porto under a blanket of damp, gray mist. It suited me. The cold clarity that had filled me since reading that report hadn't thawed, it had crystallized. I rented a car with cash, using a driver's license that felt like it belonged to someone else, the ghost of the good son. The map to Vila do Conde was a series of winding lines leading away from everything I knew. Portugal in November was all muted colors and quiet rhythms, a world away from the sharp, glaring brightness of Los Angeles and the sterile opulence of the family estate. Villa du Conde was a postcard of tranquility, all whitewashed houses with red-tiled roofs, narrow cobbled streets, and the relentless, soothing sigh of the Atlantic. It was the kind of place you came to disappear, or to be hidden. The address Voss had given me wasn't a house in the pretty town center. It was a quinta, a small, somewhat neglected farmhouse on the outskirts, perched on a hill overlooking the sea. A place with a view of endless water, maybe so she could always feel just as untethered, just as far from home. I parked the car a distance away and walked the last stretch, the scent of pine and salt air, doing nothing to calm the static in my veins. I saw her before she saw me. A woman, wrapped in a thick shawl despite the cool damp, sitting on a stone bench in the overgrown garden. She was staring at the horizon, but her eyes weren't seeing the ocean. They were seeing something else, something trapped in memory. She was thinner than the few old photographs I'd seen, her dark hair streaked with silver, her posture one of profound weariness. This was Clara, my mother. For a long moment, I just watched. The woman who gave me life. The woman they took me from. The source of my stolen identity. I expected a flood of emotion, anger, sorrow, a primal pull. Instead, the ice inside me grew harder. This was the casualty. This broken woman was the cost of their perfect lie. She wasn't just a piece of my puzzle. She was the living evidence of their crime. I pushed open the rusty, iron gate. The squeal made her flinch, her head turning slowly. Her eyes were the same shade as mine. That was the first thing that struck me. Not the family's cool gray, but a deep, troubled brown. My eyes. She didn't speak. She just stared, her face a mask of confusion, then dawning horrified recognition. She knew. She knew who I was the second she saw me. There was no doubt in her expression, only a bone-deep fear. Clara. My voice sounded foreign in the quiet. She trembled, pulling the shawl tighter. No, she whispered, not in denial of her name, but in denial of this moment. No, he promised. He promised if I stayed quiet. If I stayed away, you would be safe. You would have everything. Her words were a direct confirmation, more powerful than any report. He lied. I said, my voice flat. I have nothing that's real, and neither do you. I didn't approach her. I stood there, a stranger in her garden, an echo of a life she was forced to surrender. They told me you were unwell, that they provided for you. A bitter, choked sound escaped her, not quite a laugh. Provided? They provided a prison without walls, a bank account with a monitor, a phone that only receives calls from a lawyer once a year to check if I'm still breathing and still silent. Her English was flawless, edged with an old, refined accent that had dulled with isolation. Is that providing? They killed my life and then paid for the tomb. Tell me, I said. It wasn't a request. It was the demand of a creditor come to collect a debt 30 years overdue. And she did. The story spilled out of her, halting at first, then in a desperate torrent, as if a dam had finally burst under the weight of decades of silence. She was young, working for the Family Foundation in Seoul, naive and in love with a Korean artist, a man my grandfather would have seen as less than nothing. She got pregnant. It was a scandal, but a manageable one. Discreet support, a quiet adoption back home. That was the plan. Then Eleanor lost her baby. Robert's heir, the future of the dynasty. Robert arrived in Seoul like a storm, Clara said, her gaze distant, locked on that past. He was never my gentle older brother. He was the heir apparent, cold and efficient. He saw my pregnancy not as a problem, but as a solution. His solution. The pressure was not a request, it was a command. Give them the child. Pretend it was stillborn. In return, she would be taken care of. Her artist would be paid off, a substantial sum to disappear, which he did without a second glance. Her silence was the price for my wonderful life. He said you would be his son, his legitimate son, that you would want for nothing. that it was the greatest gift I could give you, a name, a fortune, a future. Her tears fell then, silent and full of shame. He made my love seem like selfishness. He made the theft seem like salvation. What was I? A young, frightened girl, completely alone. I signed the papers. I held you for one day. One day. I still remember the smell of your hair. She looked at me, her eyes searching my face for that infant. Then the nurse took you, and the jet was waiting. I was put on a different plane a week later to a clinic in Switzerland to recover. But recovery was impossible. The grief, the guilt, the complicity ate her alive. She became the unwell sister, shuffled between discreet facilities and remote properties, always under the watchful eye of a family-employed doctor or lawyer. Her existence was a line item in the family's secret budget, Clara maintenance, hush money, and psychological sedation. I listened. I absorbed every word, every detail. The name of the lawyer who handled the placement, the doctor in Seoul who falsified the birth records, the foundation executive who facilitated the jet's logistics. I filed it all away in the cold, dark vault of my mind. This wasn't just a family secret, it was a conspiracy, a corporate transaction with human beings as assets. "Do you hate me?" she asked, her voice small. I considered the question. Did I hate this broken woman? She was a victim, yes, but she was also the one who signed the paper. Her weakness was the crack they exploited. "I don't hate you," I said, and it was the truth. Hate was too warm, too intimate. What I felt was colder. I pity the girl you were. I have no feeling for the woman you became. You are a witness, the most important witness. A new fear entered her eyes. You can't go against them. Robert will destroy you. He'll destroy us both. He already did, I said, finally walking closer. I didn't touch her. I stood before her, looking down at the mother I never knew. The destruction is already complete. What's left are the ruins, and I intend to build my revenge from. The flight back was a crossing from one world into another. I left a weeping woman in a house of ghosts. I carried a blueprint. Clara's testimony was my foundation. I had names, dates, methods. Information is potential energy. I needed a weapon. I needed surgical precision. I didn't return to the estate. I used my inheritance to buy an anonymous condo through a shell corporation. Their money was now worth funding. I summoned Voss to my sterile new space. I need more than background, I said, handing him a list. The lawyer, Edgerton. The doctor in Seoul, Park. The executive, Miller. I want everything. Financial audits. Secrets. Fears. Voss nodded. Comprehensive due diligence. And the principals. He meant Robert and Eleanor. Leave them to me. Find me a thread to pull to make their network unravel. While Voss worked, I stepped into the light. I returned to my corner office at Thorne Holdings. Robert summoned me. I trust your time away provided perspective, he said, his back to me. It provided clarity, I replied, sitting unasked. The Henderson merger. The due diligence on their Asian supply chain is weak. It's a vulnerability. He turned, surprised. He expected a wounded boy. He found a cold executive. Your point. I'll take the lead. I'll go to Seoul next week. Deepen the relationships. Personally, I saw the calculation in his eyes. It was a smart move. He couldn't see my other reason. Seoul was where it started. Do it, he said with approval. He thought the money had won. He believed his own fiction. In Seoul, I worked impeccably. I charted the deal. In the evenings, I hired a local investigator, Mina. I gave her Dr. Park's name. I won his reputation, his finances, his fears. Her report came. Park was semi-retired, living well. His son had a gambling addiction, funded by secret loans. A perfect point of pressure. I sent Park a single email from an encrypted account regarding the infant record for Clara Thorne, June 1st, 1994. I have the original documentation. Considering a review with the medical board, discretion is preferable for all, especially for family. He responded in panic. We met. He was an old man, sweating. I stated facts. I wanted one thing, a signed, notarized affidavit detailing what Robert Thorne asked him to do. In return, I would gift his son a sum equal to his debts. A clean slate. You are colder than he is, he whispered. I am what he made. I replied, sign the paper and your part ends. He signed. One thread. Pulled. Back home, Voss delivered. Lawyer Edgerton had a secret second family funded by stolen foundation money. Executive Miller had hidden harassment settlements. They were all corrupt. They had sold their ethics once. They would do it again. I set up meetings. I presented the facts of their hidden lives, then the solution, their loyalty and cooperation. In return, their secrets stayed buried, with generous consulting fees for my accounts. They each left pale, shaken, owned. The machinery of the lie was now mine. Inside Thorne Holdings, I began a slow campaign. I identified true vulnerabilities, a subsidiary with environmental crimes, a patent ripe for invalidation, a key investor on shaky ground. I gathered these threads in a private vault. I quietly redirected capital. Small amounts, filtered through shell companies. Funds moved into gold, cryptocurrency, foreign property. I was building a lifeboat from their ship, preparing to scuttle it. Months passed. I was the perfect son, the ruthless executive. I dined with them, making polite conversation. Eleanor sensed a change she couldn't name. Robert saw only ambition, a reflection of himself. The monster he created was thriving, and he mistook it for his victory. Tonight, I sit in the dark. On my screen are two documents. One is a draft press release detailing the historic fraud by Robert and Eleanor Thorne, backed by affidavits. The second is a financial trigger to crater their stock. But a public scandal is a wildfire. That's not precision. That's chaos. My revenge is a silent, systemic failure. Tomorrow, I will use Edgerton to challenge the trust that binds me. I will use Miller to leak the subsidiary scandal, diverting Robert into a public fight. I will short the stock, bleeding their wealth slowly. I will turn their empire into a maze of traps. I will make Robert watch everything become toxic. I will make Eleanor face the social frost she fears. They fabricated my life. Now, I will unravel their future, thread by thread, until they stand in a ruin of their own making. The son they purchased has finished his audit. The balance sheet will be settled in blood and ashes. They wanted an heir. They created a reckoning. And as I prepare to become the very monster they tried to build, I can't help but wonder, when their world finally goes dark, what will be left in the light for me to see?